Are PlayStation sim racers about to witness the revolution of a title that has reigned supreme for literally decades? Well, this is not AI slop. We have properly researched this, and the results are surprising because the console sim racing market, despite all the incredible hardware that's come, is conspicuously barren compared to the wealth of different options we have on PC. In fact, in my opinion, there's only a few major titles that can actually be classed as track racing sims, namely being Gran Turismo 7, Assetto Corsa and Assetto Corsa Competizione. The second two, especially the original Assetto Corsa, are both relatively niche titles on console with much smaller player bases, which makes Gran Turismo the popular choice by default, a status it's enjoyed for years now. All three of those sims as well have their roots in the last gen, ancient now, PS4 console, meaning, crazily, we have yet to see a title that can really push the PS5 to its limit and provide a markedly new experience. Although, that might be about to change because a new sim is on the horizon which looks like it could be poised to revitalise the PS5 sim racing scene in a way that it desperately needs. And given the current stagnation of Gran Turismo 7, the question of the threat it poses to Polyphony Digital has reared its head. Should they be worried? So in this video we're going to go into detail about this new sim, what features it will include, as well as the current state of Gran Turismo 7, and just how Polyphony Digital have left themselves so vulnerable. But we will also explore potential avenues of action that the legendary studio in Gran Turismo can take to remedy this potential incoming disaster. So if you're at all interested in sim racing in this, and you don't want to miss any more coverage like this one, make sure to subscribe to my channel. About like 80% of people are not subscribed. Let's change it on this one. Before we go any further, let me tell you about this mysterious new sim I've been going on about. You may or may not have heard about it, as it's had a couple of name changes. So for those of you who don't know yet, let me introduce Project Motor Racing. It's an upcoming sim releasing on both PC and console, developed by Straightforward Studios. Now what's interesting about this studio is while they're relatively new as a studio in terms of Straightforward, they actually have a ton of experience in sim racing. Straightforward Studios was founded by Ian Bell, who you may know as a previous lead at Slightly Mad Studios, the developers behind the Project Car series. Loads of controversial stuff as well there. They did some crowdfunding that got them in trouble with financial regulators. They're doing some interesting stuff now with QA, but we'll talk about that later. Because Project Motor Racing did initially also start out under the name GTR Revival, before being shortened to GT Revival and then being renamed entirely to Project Motor Racing as the studio entered a new partnership with the publisher Giant Software. So from what we've seen so far, this sim does look like it has the potential to be an incredibly compelling package. Why? The single player campaign that they showed off on the YouTube channel looks to be quite complete and interesting, being centered around a realistic motorsport economy. Now before you start waving pitchforks and comparing this to GT7's realistic economy, this essentially means that over the course of your campaign, you'll be balancing your costs, where your chosen team financial starting point, location, and sponsorship model will influence your finances and therefore how you go racing. So it's not just about randomly lapping AI every time, it's about choosing a meta strategy that's the best balance for sustainable success. And another component to Project Motor Racing is the multiplayer, which supports ranked online crossplay. It's safe to assume that this will also be a fairly complete feature, as Straightforward Studios have brought Henrique Alves on board, who is the founder of the well-known Sim Racing System, which is a sim racing platform that supports ranked online play for multiple different sim titles such as the original Assetto Corsa and rFactor 2. So with the help of his experience, Project Motor Racing should come out with a decent multiplayer system out of the gate. I do want to drop a load of salt here. Like I said, the people behind Project Motor Racing have done some weird things in the past, and sim racing is not in a good state when it comes to new sims coming out. Assetto Corsa Evo, not in a good state. Le Mans Ultimate went through bad states. So just take it all with a little bit of pinch of salt. And this video is not sponsored, I'm just giving you my honest opinion. And a really interesting feature of Project Motor Racing as well is mod support. That might not seem like, very interesting if you're a PC sim racer, but mod support is coming to PC and console. So as reported by multiple sources, including Traction, user-generated content will be available on console for sim racers to enjoy, such as cars, liveries and tracks. So it sounds like Project Motor Racing is going to contain a mod hub similar to the one found in Farming Simulator, also published by Giant Software, where user-generated content will be verified by the developers to assure its quality. It goes without saying that this is a big selling point in the console sim racing space and will no doubt attract the attention of many players. Now, we'll get on to Gran Turismo 7 in a second. Worth bearing in mind, Gran Turismo 7 also has an incredible livery space that isn't really moderated if you've seen some of the liveries, and also Assetto Corsa Evo looks like it's going to be bringing modding in earlier than they expected. So modding is quite big. Now, the current state of Gran Turismo 7, if you're a Gran Turismo player, you'll be all too aware of just a load of fatigue and community backlash surrounding the game as it stands. Despite player demand, the car roster remains very light on up-to-date race cars, and new tracks are also thin on the ground. Instead, Polyphony Digital just seems content to add SUVs, concept cars, and worse, concept electric SUVs. Now, more for Gran Turismo, including interesting and unusual cars. That's definitely part of the GT charm and identity, but there's also no denying that a lot of SUVs are being added. The past 4 updates we've checked have all contained an SUV, and the cars that players actually want to race on track, being race cars, are for the most part outdated. Other content creators like Super GT and Black Panther have spoken at length about this issue, and with their large audiences, one can only hope that Polyphony Digital might take notice. Now, that being said, when it comes to the overall polish and quality of Gran Turismo 7, it remains best in class on console. And I would arguably say best in class of all racing games, maybe on all platforms, because Polyphony Digital have been making Gran Turismo for almost 30 years at this point, and they are absolutely masters of their craft when it comes to visuals, car model detail, and accessibility. In terms of a complete package, single player through the GT Cafe, ranked online multiplayer through daily races, custom online lobbies, and also support for what I would say is a killer feature in PSVR 2, Gran Turismo, despite its undeniable flaws and despite the growing player frustration, remains the default choice for sim racing on console. You could of course try something like Assetto Corsa Competizione, but realistically, if you want a large player base to be able to consistently find races and participate in leagues, Gran Turismo still enjoys that top spot. So why is Project Motor Racing a threat? How does this all make Project Motor Racing actually the biggest threat to Gran Turismo 7? As we've discussed, the Gran Turismo 7 player base is growing increasingly frustrated with the direction the game is taking. Polyphony Digital seemingly ignores the request for new race cars. Project Motor Racing is going to specifically cater to that audience, being focused on race cars, not SUVs, and featuring up-to-date models. Straight 4 Studios' fresh approach to in-game content is also a big reason why Project Motor Racing is poised for success in this space. After years of waiting for new race cars and enviously looking over what other sims have, console players might jump in at the opportunity to engage in exciting new content curated by the community, which has proven to be a successful model if we look at the prolific modding scene on PC for games like Assetto Corsa, which more or less owes its current relevance to its modding community. Finally, Project Motor Racing's single-player campaign seems to be more aligned with what Gran Turismo 7 players wanted for GT7. The GT Cafe system has been criticised for being too linear and not providing the level of player freedom that was experienced in past Gran Turismo campaigns. With multiple different ways to play allowing for a higher level of replayability, the Project Motor Racing single-player mode looks like it will be a more involved experience than what is currently available in GT7. So what can Polyphony Digital do? In order to retain a good level of relevance in the console sim racing space in this day and age, Polyphony Digital need to be a bit more open and transparent about the decisions they are making in regard to in-game content. Why are some types of cars being prioritised and not others? Will there be any new tracks for the game? That would certainly help reinforce the trust of the players who may be feeling disappointed by the recent car updates. In addition to increased transparency, new race cars absolutely need to be added. There are so many exciting new race cars that Gran Turismo 7 players simply cannot experience in the game, such as the Ferrari 499P, the BMW M4 GT3 Evo, or the Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT3 Evo. If Polyphony Digital can do these things, the final key to keeping the hardcore sim racing fans on board would be to play to their strengths. When GT7 works well, it does work really well. The dynamic weather is fantastic. and we've already mentioned the level of polish and quality, which is top notch. Polyphony Digital need to use those features and include more exciting races with dynamic weather such as rain or even dynamic time of day. I also mentioned previously that GT7 has a killer feature in PSVR 2, and it's one of the game's great strengths. If they can finally bring the much needed UI improvement and quality of life to this part of the experience as well, then I'm sure that GT7 would be much more attractive to players who want the most immersive experience possible. And just for the record, I don't think any other sim is ever going to beat PSVR 2 on GT7 on console. I don't think any other sim is going to get that level of VR quality. So as unfortunate as it sounds, however, the evidence is pointing towards Polyphony Digital being unlikely to change their current approach to GT7. They clearly have a vision for the game. What vision that is getting a bit confusing, but I assume it is there somewhere, and they're sticking to that regardless of player feedback. There's also the fact that Gran Turismo 8 was officially confirmed to be in development a couple of years ago, so it's fair to assume that more and more resources will be directed towards that project, and content for GT7 will slow down before stopping completely at some point in the not too distant future. Between Polyphony Digital being seemingly resistant to change and content for Gran Turismo 7 possibly slowing down soon, Project Motor Racing, if done right, will probably capture a decent amount of the hardcore sim racing fans, and they'll migrate from GT7 to the new sim. However, long-time Gran Turismo fans and more casual fans will most likely stay, if we're honest, with Gran Turismo out of loyalty and brand recognition, ensuring that the game still maintains an active player base. So what's the ultimate outcome of all this? Will Project Motor Racing really take Gran Turismo Sport at the top of the console sim racing ladder? It goes without saying that we'll only know for sure once the game releases, but right now it's looking like a real possibility. If the current trend continues, Polyphony Digital risks losing some of their credibility in the console sim racing space. And if they can't correct course with GT7, GT8 will be their shot at trying to recapture that hardcore sim racing crowd. Another possibility is that ultimately this could cause a greater likelihood to a switch to what I'm calling Gran Turismo World in the future, as they focus more on the casual player who enjoys free roam rather than sim fundamentals and a structured single player and multiplayer experience to actually become a better driver. Free roam games have proven a massive success story with, for example, the popularity of the Forza Horizon franchise, and with Sony still explicitly wanting a bigger slice of that live service pie, it might even be possible that they do the unthinkable right now and pivot Gran Turismo away from its track-focused heritage. What do you think though about Project Motor Racing? Will it revolutionise the console sim racing space? Should Polyphony just be worried about it? Is it just going to be another sim racing scam? Let me know in the comments, and if you'd like to see more sim racing discussions like this, don't forget to subscribe and watch this next video.